So I've sat across the desk from hundreds of people as a financial advisor, and I'm going to tell you something that might actually sting a little bit. I've seen executives who are pulling in six figures but are secretly broke, like properly drowning in debt. And I've seen postmen, teachers, people earning average wages who have quietly built portfolios worth millions. So what's the difference? It's not what you might think it is. It's not about how much you earn. It's about 5 money traps that almost everybody falls into. And honestly, society kind of encourages you to fall into them. That is why 90% of people stay poor their whole lives. So I'm going to walk you through every single one of these traps today, and more importantly, show you exactly how you can avoid them. And do you know what? I need you to be honest with yourself, because I bet good money that you're probably stuck in at least 2 of these right now without even realizing it. So let me start with the one that surprises people the most, I think. So I had a client come in last year, came into my office, lovely bloke, mid-50s. And when I first sat down with him, he was so proud. You could see it on his face, and he was desperate to tell me something. And he was like, I've got 50 grand saved up. And I asked him a little bit more about it. And he was like, it's all just currently sitting in my current account. And he was kind of saying, I don't really trust like the stock market or investing and anything else like that. And I'm sat there thinking, mate, you're not saving money. You are actually losing it every single day. And here's why. Think of your money like an ice cube sitting on a warm kitchen counter. It looks solid, it looks safe, but it's quietly melting away. That is what inflation does to cash. Even at the Bank of England's target base rate of 2%, your £50,000 loses about £1,000 of buying power every year. So over the last few years, obviously inflation has hit double digits, right? We've all seen it in the news. That ice cube wasn't melting, it was practically evaporating. And that's not even a small melt, by the way. A typical inflation over roughly 24 years, your cash will lose at least half of its value. Half. Your 50 grand still will be £50,000, but it will become effectively £25,000 in real term while it just sits there doing nothing. The people who build real wealth, what they do is they will keep 3 to 6 months worth of expenses for sort of cash emergencies in cash, but that's it. Everything else goes into things that actually grow their money in real term. Investments, properties, business, things that outpace the melting of the ice cube. So that client who came in with that £50,000, once I actually showed him the numbers, his face absolutely dropped. Nobody had ever explained this to him before. And do you know what? I wasn't surprised that he was skeptical of the stock market. It's just that he didn't understand the mechanisms of what was actually going on. Now, if number one surprised you, the next trap is even sneakier, because this one, the government actually helped create it. See, when the government introduced auto-enrollment into pensions, the idea was brilliant, okay? Get everyone saving automatically, making their employers sign them up into their pension, right? Brilliant idea. Millions of people who had never put a penny away were suddenly building pensions. Job done, right? You would assume so. But here's the problem that nobody's talking about. And this is one that genuinely, I don't see people addressing it enough. It's nowhere near talked about. That is never enough. Auto-enrollment is never enough. I get people coming into my office all the time going, oh, it's okay, I've got pension planning sorted because I'm in my workplace pension. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a little look at that, shall we? Let's say that you are earning £35,000 a year with the standard 8% contribution. That's the bit that you and your employer are combined legally sort of have to do. You are going to be putting away at that rate $2,300 a year. Now, that sounds pretty decent. It's better than nothing. But if you run that over 35 years, even with decent growth, you might end up with around £150,000. Now, again, that sounds pretty good, except that pot is designed to last you 20, 25, 30 years plus in retirement. Now, that £150,000, that works out as maybe £6,000 a year worth of income on top of your state pension that you'd get. But that's literally it. That 150,000 can only reasonably generate around £6,000 a year. That is what you're theoretically retiring on. That plus the state pension, if that's all you do for retirement. Now, let that sink in for a second. Seriously, think about it. What I want you to do is drop me a comment and tell me, did you actually know this number before watching this video? I'm genuinely curious as to how many people have ever actually run the maths on their own pension. Now, then there's the state pension on top, of course, as we've said. Now, the full state pension in the UK is roughly £12,000. So let's say that's another, roughly speaking, £1,000 a month. It'll obviously change. So think to yourself this. You've got your pension pot paying £6,000. You've got your state pension paying £12,000. Now, you might have other assets on top of this as well, but from purely an auto-enrollment pension perspective, could you live on that, the life that you want? Could you travel? Could you help your grandkids? Could you keep the heating on? It's like thinking that you're kind of like training for a marathon because you're walking to the shops each day. Yes, you're moving, but you're not going to finish the race. This is the second reason, in my view, that people stay poor. They hand over all the responsibility of their pension provision to their employer and to the government, and they just hope for the best. The 10% who actually build wealth, what do? Well, they log in. They look at what their fund is building, what's going in, how it's working, how it's invested. You would be amazed. Most people never ever have even checked this once. Their pension could well be sitting in something like the default pension fund, which might be losing them over £30,000 to £50,000 in fees alone and underperformance over their lifetime. That's a whole car gone. It's a whole year's salary gone, just in fees and poor performance that you don't need to pay. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and frustrating, because even the people who do start taking control often miss the next trap. And this one is basically just like volunteering to give your money away. So just to clarify on that one, I think genuinely the main reason that people will stay poor primarily later in life is because they assume that their retirement planning and their retirement, their pensions is being essentially catered for by their workplace pension without them having to think about it. Now, trap number three, forgot where we were. Now, I literally mean that you are volunteering to pay tax. The UK average taxpayer is missing out on hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds a year. And the mad thing is that HMRC aren't hiding this. The tools are right there. It's just that most people do not know they exist. Right now, it is worse than it has ever been. The government has been freezing tax thresholds for years while wages creep up. So essentially the points at which you start paying basic rate, higher rate and additional rate tax have been frozen, but everyone's wages have been going up, hopefully, at least within line with inflation. That is what's called fiscal drag. Basically, you get a standard pay rise and all of a sudden you're paying 40% on some of your income. Not because you got rich or because you earned loads more, but because the goalposts have moved. So, if you've had a pay rise in the last few years and you felt like you probably weren't actually that better off, that is exactly why. But this is what gets me the most. The UK actually gives the most incredibly generous tools to protect your money, and almost nobody uses them. For example, your ISA. You can put £20,000 a year into your ISA, and everything it earns, all the growth, all the payouts is completely tax-free forever. That's huge. Most people never use it. I had this one client who's like a nurse or something like that, like didn't earn a lot of money, who was maxing her ISA 5 years ago, essentially. She made a big contribution, about 5 years ago, around COVID time. And she put £20,000 in. She saved over £4,000 in tax that she would have otherwise paid. £4,000 just from ticking a box where her money goes and putting it into her ISA instead. Quick thing, if you don't know whether your savings are in an ISA or not, check tonight. It literally takes 2 minutes. If they're not, you could be paying tax on your interest for absolutely no reason. Also, check out your personal savings allowance just to make sure that that covers it as well. Also, in the tax space, there's something called salary sacrifice. Now, different thing, but this is also worth knowing because this is completely free money. Your employer takes your pension contribution out of your pay before tax. So you pay less tax and national insurance. So for a lot of people, that means an extra few £100 a year going into your pension that you'd otherwise lose to tax. If you're self-employed, there's also a thing called a SIP, a self-invested personal pension, where you can put money into that and the government tops it up as well. Now, 90% of people, this is why they will stay broke, because they ignore all of these tools. They think ISAs are complicated. They think pensions are something to not worry about. The 10% of people, they use every single allowance every year like clockwork. They treat it like a game. How much more can I legally shield from the tax man this year? If you're investing money without putting it into an ISA or a pension first, you're basically writing a check to HMRC going, here you go, have some of mine. Why would you do that? And this is where people really shoot themselves in the foot, because there's one excuse that I hear that costs people more money than all of the other ones combined. I will start investing when I earn more. I hear that so often, constantly. And look, there's a certain part of me that gets it, right? It feels logical, but it's actually the most expensive mistake that you can make. Let me tell you about two people that I have worked with in the past. One was a couple earning about £150,000 a year combined. They had all the classic stuff, big house, 2 nice cars, holiday abroad, twice a year, 3 times a year, I think it was. But they were living paycheck to paycheck, literally nothing left at the end of each month. Their lifestyle just somehow expanded to swallow every penny they had. Then I had this other client who, this always is absolutely crazy to me. She was just a teaching assistant. She was putting away £100 a month in her 20s into a simple investment fund. Never earned more than like £28,000 in her life. She's now in her late 50s and her portfolio is worth over £400,000. The difference, it certainly wasn't her income. It was her behavior. It was the gap between what she earned and what she spent. And the best part is this is nothing that she did is what you can't do. Nothing. She didn't have any special knowledge. She just started. She made a decision to basically go from being broke and staying broke, earning well but staying broke, and actually building wealth. And here's the bit that really gets people. The reason starting early matters so much is obviously compounding. You have more time for compounding. Think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill. At the top, it's tiny, right? It barely picks anything up. But the longer it rolls, the more snow it collects. And eventually, it's enormous. That snowball doesn't care how small it started. It cares how long it's been rolling. If you wait until your 40s or late 40s to start, you have missed a huge chunk of that compounding timeline. I still don't think it's kind of game over if you don't start, that narrative of you've got to start investing when you're 20, otherwise you're never going to be a millionaire. Complete rubbish. That you can definitely have time, but the concept here is the earlier you start making meaningful contributions, the better. The reality is you can never get time back. So let me just show you what that looks like. If you put £100 a month into a basic diversified investment from age 25 to 65, you would end up with roughly £250,000. If you started at 35 instead, you'd have about 125,000. Same monthly amount, 10 years delay, half the money. Now, this is obviously a very simplistic approach. You might not have that £100 to invest every month from age 25, but this is the trap that breaks my heart, honestly, because it's so simple. Please start investing. Even if it's £50 a month, that's it. Because time is the most powerful wealth building tool that exists. And every month you wait, you're wasting it. And here's the thing. That, in a nutshell, is another huge reason why most people will stay broke, because they just never get their head around this concept. But here's what I've realized after all of these years. You can do everything I've just said. You can sort out your cash, fix your pension, use your ISA, start early, and you'll still end up being poor. Because there's one thing that separates the 90% from the 10%, and it's got nothing to do with money, strangely. It's about your identity. It comes down to one simple question all the time. Are you a consumer or are you an owner? The 90% of people who never build real wealth, the habits that keep them poor, they buy stuff. New phone, new clothes, subscriptions, takeaways, the latest gadget. They work hard, sure. They get paid, and then they just give it out to all of these other companies. The 10% who actually don't do that, they do something very, very different. They buy pieces of those companies. So when the new iPhone comes out, for instance, the 90%, the people who have these habits that continuously make you poor, what do? They put it on a credit card or get it out on a contract. The 10%, they own Apple shares, and the dividends help pay for the next phone. It is a completely different way of seeing the world. Instead of asking, what can I buy? Start asking, what can I own? And look, obviously, I'm not saying never enjoy your money. Obviously, I'm not. But every pound you spend, it's a choice, isn't it? It's a choice. And these are the sort of habits and processes that make the difference between staying poor forever and people actually building wealth. You can give it to a company once and it's gone forever, like buying the newest iPhone every single year, or you can invest it. You can own a tiny piece of that company and let it work for you while you sleep. I actually worked this out once. You've probably seen this online before. If you'd have put the cost of every iPhone upgrade since 2007 into Apple stock instead of buying the phone, you'd be sitting on well over £50,000 right now. Obviously, depending on how many you bought and how often you upgraded. But from just phone money, that's crazy, right? The 10%, the people who don't have these habits and structures that keep them poor, they're not smarter, they're not luckier. They just made that switch in their brain and stuck with it. Over 10, 20, 30 years, that one shift is the difference between retiring at 60 and working until you drop. Now, you'd think that was the whole picture. But remember what I said earlier about the government's moving the goalposts with tax? That problem is way bigger than I let on. Because everything I just told you about building wealth, it kind of falls apart if the government quietly is taking more and more of your money without noticing it. That is why you need to watch this video here, because that's exactly what's happening right now. Stealth taxes, frozen thresholds, fiscal drag. It's costing you thousands every year. So give it a click and watch this video. I will break down exactly how they're doing it and what you can do to fight back. See you there.